Alright, welcome to screencast number 1 for lesson 4 of unit 8, and we're looking at page 468, weather maps and weather prediction. By the end of this lesson, you should understand how meteorologists forecast the weather using weather maps and other data. Okay. Your TEKS 8.10b is identify how global patterns of atmospheric movement influence local weather using weather maps that show high and low pressures and fronts. Remember, we've already talked about our global patterns of atmospheric movement, our global winds and things like that. So we're going to use that background information to help us understand some of the things in this lesson. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I'm not going to read word for word, but we're just going to kind of paraphrase. It says different observations give clues to different weather. If you go outside and take note of certain conditions, it might allow you to make some sort of prediction about what the weather is doing or is going to do. Weather forecasting is the analysis of scientific data to predict future weather conditions. What do they analyze? Well, they analyze precipitation, humidity, dew point, air pressure, seasonal wind speeds, directions, what the clouds are doing. They take a lot of information, put it all together to come up with a forecast. Okay, a forecast would be like telling what they think the weather's going to do into the future. Okay, so elements of weather. What elements of weather are forecast? The study of weather and the Earth's atmosphere is called meteorology. Scientists who study meteorology are called meteorologists. You're probably familiar with meteorologists because you've seen the weatherman on TV. He's a meteorologist. Okay, there are 8 principal elements of weather that are observed around the clock at certain stations. We typically use the information that comes out of the data gathered from the Giddings Airport. But there are a lot of places throughout the country that are gathering the same sets of information so that they can all be put together in a database and we can come up with some predictions about what we think the weather's going to do. Okay, so the 8 elements are air temperature, humidity, wind direction, wind speed, clouds, precipitation, atmospheric pressure, and visibility. Okay, we use these 8 elements to make accurate weather forecasts so that we can help people stay safe, comfortable, and make decisions about what they're going to do and where they're going to go, things like that. Okay, on number 5 it says, infer. Forest fighters need accurate and detailed weather forecast. What weather elements would these firefighters be most interested in? Well, yes, they would need to know cloud cover and precipitation, but as far as trying to come up with a strategy on how to fight a fire, a forest fire, or something like that, they're also really going to need to pay attention to wind speed and wind direction. All right, let's go down to the bottom of the page and take a quick look at number 6. All right, it says identify 3 elements of weather that appear in the beach scene. I can tell that there is plenty of wind. I can tell that because of the waves. And if I look out off the shore, there are some dark clouds. There is obviously rain. And so I can predict that there's probably a thunderstorm going on just offshore. Okay. All right, how do we gather some of the weather information? There are planes that will go up that are run by the NOAA, that's the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, which is a government agency. They might drop sensors to get an idea of what the atmosphere is doing in that particular location, because they can also gather information about not only what's happening at the ground level, but also up several miles. 7, 8, and 9 under the extend, you can omit those and please join me on page 472. Okay, so 472 and 473 talks about how weather data is collected. Okay, there are basically 4 different methods, and we kind of use them all together in combination. But the 4 different ways that we're getting information are listed in red. Okay, so ground stations would be number 1. So we're collecting data at the ground level at certain locations. For instance, the Giddings Lee County Airport would be where we get our information from here at school. We can use radar. Okay, radar works by bouncing radio waves off of precipitation, and the stronger the signal is that's returned to the radar, the heavier the precipitation is. Also, the longer it takes for the signal to return, the farther away the precipitation is. So we can also figure out how far away the precipitation is and how heavy it is. Okay, Doppler radar, which is a type of weather radar, it's a little bit more advanced than typical radar, can detect precipitation and air motion within a storm using the Doppler effect. This technology is important for detecting and tracking severe storms and tornadoes. This is the one that's a little bit more sensitive and can detect the motion within storms that might indicate a possible tornado. Okay, then on page 473, we have method number 3. We can do a dropsonde, which is something they referred to on page 471. Okay, we can drop something from an airplane, or we can send something up in a weather balloon. Okay, so weather sensing instruments carried by aircraft and balloons measure weather conditions in the middle to the upper atmosphere, and that's important because when we use a ground station, we're stuck on the ground. We're taking conditions at the ground, but we also need to understand what's happening in the upper atmosphere because that is going to help determine ultimately what the weather is going to do. Weather balloons are released twice daily from stations around the world. Okay. If it is an airplane and they're using a dropsonde, or if it's a weather balloon and they are releasing it that way, the information that they gather is transmitted by radio signal back to the ground stations. So the ground stations not only collect information at the ground, but they're also receiving information from the weather balloons when they send them up. Okay, and then the other way that we are collecting weather data is by satellite, so that's method number 4. Okay, we have weather satellites orbiting at high altitudes that can provide data on water vapor, cloud top temperatures, and the movement of weather systems. Okay. All right. So how is weather data collected? We collect it using ground stations. We collect weather data using radar, by sending up instruments by balloon or dropping them with an aircraft, and we can collect weather data using a satellite.